Hello and welcome to the Calling the Real You podcast. I'm your host, Pamela Horton, and I'm calling the real you out each and every week. Today we're talking with Shannon Graham, and we're going to be discussing something unique. Shannon Graham, he is, well, you're going to find out, just a very unique individual. He is the founder of the Legacy Program, an intensive coaching program that helps visionary leaders change the world by doing the impossible. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. How does he do that? Why does he do that? He's been recently interviewed for Forbes magazine, and it's with great pleasure and honor to interview him today, to bring him into your world, wherever you are. So please give a warm welcome to Shannon Graham. Shannon, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for sharing your time and energy with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So, Shannon, I need to let everyone know, we first became connected a couple of years ago, and I just recently said this story to Shannon, guys. 2 years ago, I think it was through LinkedIn that we became connected, and we had a couple of conversations. And from the first word out of Shannon's mouth, I knew that he was just a visionary himself, someone that was very unique, someone that was down to earth and walked his talk. And I wanted to learn more about him, and so we continued the connections via social media. And over the last couple of years, he's just been posting remarkable stories and sharing his successes along with the successes of his clients. And so I wanted to bring him into your world to let you know that usually when we're doing one thing the same way over the years, that sometimes it's just good to change it up and to really stop living small, which is how I felt I was doing so a couple of years ago. And through inspiring messages and the work that Shannon's been doing, I've learned to really step out of my own way and stop living small. And I wish the same for all of you who are listening. Shannon, tell us, why are you so different?
Well, that's a tough question, I guess. I guess maybe let's answer that question with a question. From your perception, why do you perceive me as different?
And there's the coach. So as I mentioned, I really believe that you are one of the very few folks who walk their talk in this space. And what I mean by in this space is spiritual development, personal development, business development. You are someone who is not doing webinars. You're someone who, in terms of generating leads for yourself, you're someone who is not doing what we normally see online with Facebook ads and things of that nature to find people. Really, you're doing it a different way, and you're being the most authentic. You're being the real you. You're allowing yourself to shine. You're living in your talent. You're living in your space. And so that's my perspective, and I'm hoping that I'm right, but if I'm not, either way, please validate or correct me, because there's just something very unique and different about you.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I came to a distinction a couple of years ago that there are really two types of people in the world. There are people who have a gift, and those are people like inventors or creators, like music or technology. They have something that can make the world better, and they bring it to the world. And typically, leverage and automation is the best way to do that. Now, the other type of person that you have is someone that I consider to be the gift. And that's someone who just themselves is the majority of the value of what they bring to the world. So, for example, Mozart had a gift. His gift was his music, and he brought that to the world. Whoever invented the cell phone, they invented the cell phone, and then they brought that to the world, and now the world gets to benefit from those inventions. However, there are people who are a gift that didn't bring anything to the world. They simply brought themselves to the world. So these are people like Mother Teresa and Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. very notable people. So both changed the world, but how they did it was different. And so I think it's critical for people to understand whether you have a gift or you are a gift. And if you are a gift, how you bring yourself to the world is much different than people who have a gift. And I think that's where most people these days get confused, is they see the leverage and automation of people who have a gift and they assume that that's how they should bring themselves to the world, when in fact, if you are the gift and you utilize leverage and automation, then you dilute the gift. And so my work has been focused on understanding those two and then fully embracing the one that I am and bringing that to the world in the most powerful way.
And I, for one, can say that I'm very grateful for that, and I'm sure your clients are as well. Tell me a little bit about, what does it look like to be your client? What can someone expect?
Well, I think so. One of the major phrases that I use in my coaching is the highest probability of the deepest impact. And what that means is, if you work with someone, then the way that you work with them ideally should bring the highest probability of the deepest impact, right? Because if our goal at the end of the day is to create results for people, and we are in control of how we deliver those results, then I believe that the lens that we move through in order to deliver those results should be the highest probability of the deepest impact. If that's your lens, then how you go about coaching or training or whatever it is, bringing your gift to the world, becomes very different than most likely what most other people are doing. So, I expect a lot of my clients, because they expect a lot of themselves. They want to do big things in the world. They want to do things that have never been done. They want to do things that literally will change the world. And I believe that if you have an excellent destination that you want to arrive at, that you cannot have an inadequate vehicle, right? So just like Michael Phelps trains 6 days a week for 6 hours a day, and he's been training, I think, for like 8 or 9 years or something like that. So that's a lot. That's intensive. And he's arguably one of the best athletes ever, and he's by far one of the best swimmers we've ever seen. So there is a formula for excellence, and my coaching mirrors that. My coaching says, if there is this excellent destination that you want to end up in, then having excellent standards and an excellent environment to subject yourself to is important.
And so let's say someone is interested in working with you. Where on the spectrum would you say that they're ready to make things happen or go big? Have they already been making things go big all along and just need an extra push? Or do they have some serious and significant roadblocks? Are they in their own way, and do you help them through that as well?
Sure. The answer is yes to both of those.
Okay.
Typically people that I work with already have some momentum. They already have some traction. Typically they already are a business owner. They've got some momentum. They're into the mid 6 figures, and they're stuck. They have worked really hard to get to where they are, and they have kind of hit a wall. And they've hit a wall in kind of one of 3 categories, and it's any combination of the 3, which is their mindset, their business model, or their personal performance. And so we go to work on most of the time all 3.
And when you say that, the expectations and how you're working with your clients, and these three things pop up, right? And so oftentimes you work on all three. You're not living with them. Like how is it that you're making these changes? They're the ones that actually have to do the work based on what, and I assume that you have it's not a one size fits all. It's not a package. I assume that you actually customize how you're working with each client. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Each person most likely will need some work in all three of these categories. However, every person is different in where they're at in each of these categories and what their limiting beliefs are in these categories. So the kind of big picture is the same, but the finite prescription and kind of procedure is very different.
How intense is it, though? Seriously, how intense is it? How often are engaged with your clients? I guess why I'm asking this is because some coaches that exist and that are working in the space, they don't have a lot of boundaries. And so, unfortunately, they're working through their own stuff, right? People who are in the space or whatever, they've learned a certain set of skills because of their own adversities, et cetera. So they've learned how to overcome things, and that is their niche. That's what it is that they're teaching. And they themselves don't have any boundaries. So you have these fabulous coaches. What does it look like for you? You set boundaries up, I would assume. No one's like texting you at 1 o'clock in the morning, for example, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yes. So I speak to my clients once a week, typically for about an hour. I never coach back to back just because I like to have time in between. I do have some time available for my clients if they need, 5 minutes, 10 minutes here and there. That's not a problem. And the reason is because I choose to work with less people so that not that I can give each one of them more time. However, it's nice to be able to give them just a little bit of availability when they need it. A perfect example is one of my clients last night had a really amazing opportunity come up, and he was kind of wanting to bounce the ball around a little bit and kind of talk about some mindset stuff. And it just so happens that I felt pretty clear that, that conversation would only take about 10 minutes, which is not a lot of time for me, but the value that would come out of it was a lot for him. So that was an easy decision for me to make. So typically I speak to people for an hour, and then if need be here and there, I'm happy to jump on calls with people.
That's awesome. You say that you just mentioned that you choose to have less clients per se versus somebody might take on more clients. No matter where a coach is in their practice, whether they're just starting out, in the middle, or well-seasoned veteran, there's still that inclination or fear of letting somebody go or turning business away. When in fact, when you do turn business away, that's when you're opening yourself up to receive actual clients that you really do deserve and that deserve your service and that you're meant to serve. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, you have to think of coaching like a relationship. You are in a relationship with your clients. And just like dating, if you would ideally like to be with your kind of picture perfect mate, if you will, but you continue to say yes to people who are not that ideal picture, then not only do you keep yourself from what you want, but you fill the space for where that ideal person could be standing. And I honestly believe that your ideal clients will get the most value, more value than anybody else from you. So it really works in a number of different ways. As far as your happiness and fulfillment, obviously working with ideal clients is key. But as far as the impact that you make on the world, working with ideal clients is critical because those are the people that I believe that you're going to be able to help the most. So you might as well focus on them anyway.
Absolutely. Your audience, your coaches, your clients, I actually don't know if this is public or not, but I know that your services are not inexpensive, let's say, right? And your services are highly valuable. There's obvious results that come with it. What would you say to somebody who is at a really crucial point in their career, their coaching career, who wants to work with their ideal clients and yet literally has no other sources of income other than their coaching practice, and they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, meaning either they don't take that client and then they don't eat, or they do take that client and then they're in that codependent type of whatever relationship that's not that they're dating. What can you say to them?
Sure. I've been there. And I've made the decision to take on the client that I knew in my gut was a bad idea, just so that I could eat, just so that I could pay the bills. And it ended up costing me way more in the long run. It cost me way more in the long run. So my encouragement to anyone who's in that situation is to raise your standards. And if that means that you don't eat for a week, then it's far better than, number one, being out of integrity, and number two, dealing with the future nightmare that comes with working with non-ideal clients. Because you're the one who goes to sleep with yourself every night. You got to look yourself in the face and say, today I made a decision to be out of integrity with myself, and that's not going to help you be a good coach. That's not going to help you be a good leader, and it's certainly not a behavior that you want to continue to indulge in. And so, even though it's hard, even though it's challenging, my suggestion is the challenge or the pain that comes with having high standards and going through maybe a little bit of a dry spell is far better and has a much greater ROI on the back end long term than taking the quick money and just, feeling like shit about it and continuing to rinse and repeat.
Mhm. You said, I wish I had saved it, so I might actually not do a very good job of repeating it exactly, but you had alluded to in one of your recent posts of, it was something to the effect that there's in the coaching world, people should only work with a coach that's achieved what the results that they actually are aiming for. And you're actually saying the opposite. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And did I get that right? Is that the right essence? Yeah. Okay.
You got it right.
Okay.
Yeah. So most people hire a coach these days to help them achieve a result that coach themselves has achieved. And in my opinion, that's really more like mentoring. A mentor is someone who's kind of been there and done it. They know the ins and the outs. They know the pitfalls. They know the shortcuts. They know, whatever the tricks of the trade. So by working with them, you can produce similar results, and you can do it in a fraction of the time with a fraction of the headaches. There's nothing wrong with that if your desire is to do something that's been done before. And that's okay for most people. And there's nothing wrong with that. The difference is, in my world, the people that I like to work with and the people who benefit the most from working with me want to do things that have literally never been done before. Not that they have never done before, but literally the world has never done before. So it changes the game because there's no way that I will have done what they are wanting to do, because if I had, then they wouldn't be wanting to do it. So one of those requires knowledge and experience, and the other requires creativity and imagination. And I just choose the latter because that's the playground that I like to play in.
Well, that's where all the juicy goodness comes from.
Yeah, and, again, I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. I would just say that as far as innovation goes, doing things that have never been done in regards to changing the world, I think there's a much stronger effect on impacting the world in a positive way when you do something that's never been done before.
And this is going back to actually specifically what it is that you do. You help visionary leaders change the world by doing the impossible. Can you give me an example? Or is the information still, too soon or too proprietary to give us an example of the impossible?
Of course. So a couple of years ago, I had a guy that lives in New Zealand come to me and say, I want to raise the GDP of New Zealand by raising the GDC, which is gross domestic confidence. In New Zealand, they have what's called tall poppy syndrome, which is kind of it's a mindset that basically says, who are you to have a dream? Who are you to, think that you can change the world? So it's unfortunate because it causes a lot of people in New Zealand to downplay themselves. And yet New Zealand has some of the most innovative geniuses in the world. So it really is a tragedy because here are these amazing geniuses that create this amazing technology, and then they downplay it and they downplay themselves and they sit on it and the world doesn't get the benefit. So, that's what I would call an impossible question. How do we raise the GDP of New Zealand by raising the GDC? I had no idea how to do it. And yet that's the fun part, right? Like, how do we do the impossible? How do we do something that's never been done? And so we kind of racked our brain on it for a while, and we finally cracked it. And the secret was, there is a guy, I think in the late 1950s, his name was Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile.
Yes.
And when he broke the 4-minute mile that same year, a handful of other people did it purely because they believed that something that they had thought was impossible was possible. So the major key reason that they were able to do that had nothing, like they didn't go and train 3 times harder after they found out that he did it. They didn't say, oh, wow, he broke the 4-minute mile, I'm going to go triple down on my training. It was, for the majority of them, it was just a mindset shift. It was like they had the capacity, they had the physical ability, they just mentally didn't believe it was possible. And then they believed it was possible, and then they did it. So that is a huge metaphor for life. It's a huge metaphor for human potentiality. And basically what it's a metaphor of is when you show people that the impossible is possible, they can do it too. So we decided to make an example out of somebody. We took this one inventor whose name is Ollie, and he invented what's called a rapid public transportation system. It's a zero-emission, almost like gondola system that runs above the traffic line. It's genius. And he invented it 10 years ago. The world has not been able to benefit from that technology for 10 years because of this tall poppy thing. And he works with my client, and my client is an amazing coach. He helps him with his mindset, helps him with his ability to pitch his idea, to communicate the value of his idea, to have confidence. And so much so that he gets invited to India by the Prime Minister to pitch his idea to the Prime Minister of Transportation. And as a result of that pitch, India has now decided that they are going to utilize his technology in their smart cities, which they just funded for $1 trillion, with a T, $1 trillion over the next 8 years. And he is the front runner for a $220 million initiative to create this rail system. So travel in India is forever changed because of this. And he went back to New Zealand as this kind of reigning champion, Roger Bannister type figure. And now 12 months later, as a result, other small businesses that saw him have done things that are equally as amazing, if not more so, than him. And so the GDP of New Zealand has literally gone up as a result of raising the GDC. And
wow.
that's, 24 months.
That's pretty cool. And you had a
That's
hand in
cool.
that. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's really
that's
cool.
true.
I mean, considering that I literally created the program in 2000 at the end of 2014, and it was just two guys sitting in a living room kind of dreaming up the impossible, and now 24 months later, here we are reading about it in the news. All you have to do is go to Google and type in Modi Matrino, which Modi is the Prime Minister of India, and Matrino is the name of the technology, and you can read about it. So it's just phenomenal, and this is maybe important for people who are listening to hear. All it takes to change the world is just a couple highly committed people. I mean, literally, if you follow the chain, if you follow the results backwards from the massive change in India and New Zealand, it went from Ollie making the pitch to Daniel, my client who coached him, to myself. There's about three people. There are three kind of like small hinges that swing the big door, as I like to say, in this scenario. So that's really, that's nothing. Three people in order to create those kind of results.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I say that to inspire those who are listening, because if they want to do big things in the world, it's totally possible, and you don't have to have a huge team, and you don't have to have millions of followers on YouTube or like whatever. You just have to be willing to be bold. As I like to say in my program, dare and the world will yield.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's not egotistical because you're being of service. I mean, the whole idea is to be of service and to be the gift that you are. And
right.
It requires the commitment, but that's really powerful, powerful, Shannon. Are you accepting new clients now?
Yes.
And how is it that people can find you?
The best way is just my personal Facebook page or my website, ShannonGraham.com.
Okay, and I'll include that in the posting of the podcast as well. Cool. Shannon, listen, I want to thank you for giving us your time. I do know how valuable it is. All of our time is valuable, but seriously, it's been wonderful to hear your golden nuggets of information, your wisdom. One of the things I did want to highlight today was also from that same post, and I did write this down. You know, you do say, be bold. You may fear judgment of others, but you should fear not being you way more, which is why I felt like you were such a great fit for Calling the Real You out or Calling the Real You podcast. And I can't thank you enough for joining us, for sharing your wisdom, and I'll be sure to share your information like I mentioned in the link. Any questions at all, or if you had to say one more thing to everybody, what would that be? Not that it wasn't enough. I mean, you gave great stuff today. One other thing.
Yeah, I'd say if you have something that you want to do, then decide that you're going to do it. I think there are so many reasons that people create to not do things. I would encourage you to take that same energy and that same creativity that goes into why you can't do something and put it into why you can or why you must.
Thank you. And you know something, I'm not going to let you off the hook yet. I want to know what your most favorite thing that you like to do for yourself to help you stay in that state of mind. What's the one thing that you do for yourself every day?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was actually just thinking about this today, and this is something that most people don't do, and I don't know that most people necessarily need to do it, but for my work it's important, which is I exercise my imagination every day.
Wow.
My imagination.
That's
because
yeah, go ahead.
Because it's critical. When you're doing things that have never been done before, it requires you to be able to think much differently. And just like if you're a triathlete and when you show up to race day, what is required of you is a body that is finely tuned, that is up to the challenge, well, it's no different for me. My mind must be finely tuned. And I realize that my imagination is a critical piece to that. So, a lot of people these days are focused on biohacking and like getting the metrics down of their heart rate and their, and their breath and all that stuff. And that's great. That's good information, but there's almost no one that I know of that focuses each day on training their creativity and their imagination.
That's going to be another show,
Yeah, great.
You're gonna have to give some tidbits on exactly what that means. I'm gonna save it though, but I love it. I love the thought. Thank you again for giving us you and having the impact with your clients that you're having, which obviously impacts all of us sooner rather than later. And very, very grateful for you, Shannon. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, as always, to bring visionaries, luminaries into your world, into your home. Please connect with us at callingtherealYOU.com or Facebook Calling the Real You. There are a few folks that I do need to thank for with them. This just wouldn't be possible. And the number one person is my husband, Eric Horton, Reverend Patricia Brooks, whose platform we are being hosted on, Lisa Imperante of Lux Salon and Spa, Yolanta Bremer of Yola Portraits, Karen DeFelice of Karen DeFelice Designs, and, of course, the transformational music by Jim Oliver. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And remember, call the real you out.